Hey folks, welcome to the channel and welcome to Meshtastic For Dummies. Now don't worry, don't be offended, I'm not calling you a dummy. I'm actually calling myself a dummy because that's where I was at when I first started hearing about Meshtastic. If you've been around the internet and you get served the same kind of stuff I do, I immediately got hit with videos about Meshtastic, but I almost also immediately got overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. So I figured it out, and I figured that makes me qualified to help you out get started on Meshtastic. So what we're going to do in this video is, first I'm going to go over what Meshtastic is and kind of the very basics of how it functions. If you already know all that, I'm going to have a timestamp down below to jump ahead to show you how you can set up your first node. And I'm going to show you how you can do it for 10 bucks. $10 to $15 for your first node. It'll get you on the network. And these little guys you can build very, very cheap. And kind of the prices range from $10 up to like these things. This is kind of the new hot item, the LilyGo T-Deck here. This goes for about 70 bucks. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why I actually don't recommend this one. I recommend one of these or one of these that you can do for about 10 bucks. But first, let's get into what Meshtastic is. Meshtastic is an off-grid mesh network that allows you to text message with other people that are on that same mesh. So the best way I can describe it is transport yourself back to elementary school. You were sitting on one side of the classroom and your friend was on the other side of the classroom because your teacher separated you because you keep talking. But you have to make plans for recess. You both want to play handball. So you take a piece of paper and you write in the little secret code that you and your friend have, want to play handball, meet me on the handball court at 11:30. You fold that note up into a paper football and you hand it to the person next to you. And they hand it to the next person and they hand it to the next person, and then your friend gets it, opens it up, reads that secret code you've got, and now he knows you're playing handball at recess. This works pretty much the same way. It starts with your phone. Now I know I said no cell networks, and this is not using a cell network, not using internet. It uses an app on your phone. You type out the message, and then it transmits that message via Bluetooth to your node. This is the one that you'd have in your pocket, backpack, whatever. And then it transmits that message from node to node to node until it reaches your friend. Then your friend can open it up and read it. It also has another feature where you can send a message out to the entire network. So that way you send this out and it keeps shooting itself out. And it'll actually travel pretty darn far. Talk about that in a second. That's the very basics. There's a lot more to it, but I'm trying to explain it in very basic terms so everybody can wrap their heads around it. Now, what's the use case for Meshtastic? Well, there's a couple actually. The first one is if you're in an area that does not have any cell reception, but you need to communicate. Say you're out camping. And these things actually, because they mesh, if you have a GMRS radio or one of those FMRS ones, and you're on this side of a mountain and your friend's on this side of a mountain, the radio can't do this. But with these, you can take one of these and stick it on the top of the mountain, and now your messages will go over the mountain. And these will actually transmit pretty darn far. Another use case for it would be if the grid goes down in a proverbial, you know what hits the fan situation. Now you have a network that you can set up and talk to each other. Now I mentioned distance, and this was the first node that I set up, and I was actually a little worried because the area that I live is very hilly and we're not in a big city, so I wasn't sure how many of these nodes would be around. I fired this thing up and I stuck it on the roof of my truck and I waited, and almost immediately it started finding nodes. It'll tell you that in the app. You can actually see it. Some of these do have little screens on them on the front. It'll actually tell you what it's finding. And in some cases, it'll tell you where they were. Furthest node that it found for me was about 100 miles away. Now that was several hops through nodes away because I have mountains in my area, but it actually got pretty far. Another neat thing was right after that, we went on a family vacation and I went out hiking. The area I was hiking did not have cell signal, but I had this thing with me and I was checking how far I could get messages out, and I was messaging back and forth with people. Where I was at, I was connecting to nodes that were past the hotel that my wife was staying at. So had she had one of these, I still could have messaged her and let her know what was going on and that I was safe, even though I didn't have cell service. It's also cool that some of these have GPS in them, so it can transmit back your location if you're going to use it for a tracker, stuff like that. There's a lot of cool stuff you could do with them. Anyway, I'm done blabbering about that. So now let's get into what you actually need to join the mesh, and that is you need a node. And What's really cool about this is you can get a node extremely cheap. Let me show you how. This is the first thing you see when you open up a lot of Meshtastic videos, and that is fancy builds using multiple boards and having to solder stuff, and it gets very intimidating, and you don't need almost any of this. Let's clear the table. So the only things you actually need to get this thing going are this thing and a USB cable. So let me show you what's in the box here. So you pop this thing open, and this in here is a LoRa board. LoRa stands for long range radio. And this is a Haltech V3. There's V2s, V3s, and there's some other stuff out there too, but we're gonna concentrate on the V3 because I think it's the best bang for your buck board. I've seen them as low as $10 or $11 if you really shop around. I'll have links below, but I would encourage you to shop around to find a board. Now the V2s can be had for a little bit cheaper. The biggest difference between the V2s and V3s is V2s have a micro USB, V3s have a USB Type-C port. Talk about that in a second too with some warnings so you don't cause problems with your board. But the other thing with the V2s, there's some other differences in there, but that's the primary one. So what's in here is the board, a antenna, and a connector for that antenna. Now, before you go out and buy your board and all this stuff, you do need to make sure you get the right equipment. There are different frequency ranges depending upon where you live. I'm in the United States, so I'm 915 megahertz. I will have listed down below a link where you can check and see what you need to get for your country or region. If you're in the US, 915. If you're elsewhere, it might be something different. So let's go over some words of caution before you immediately start tinkering with this thing. Two things is, first thing is everybody's tempted immediately to plug things in and see what happens. And you know what you're gonna do if you plug things in and see what happens? You're gonna fry stuff. Two different ways with these. Way one is if you plug this in without the antenna connected, you can fry the actual transmitter because it's trying to transmit with no antenna and it overheats. So what you want to do first is hook up the antenna. Do not plug in the USB. I'll talk about that in a second. So you'll notice on the top of this board, there is a little brass looking nub or a copper nub. And then here on the wire, got the same thing. It just clicks on. It doesn't screw on, it clicks on. So you just want to put it over the top of that guy and just push it in. So now we've got the wire in place. Now we have to screw on the antenna itself. The antenna just screws on right there. So now the board is not going to fry itself unless we do one other knucklehead thing. And that is, if you get the board, if you get a V3, it's got a USB Type-C. Do not plug in a USB Type-C to C cable into a high amperage brick. It is not set up for that. It's pretty much recommended to always use a Type-C to a standard USB so you don't overload this sucker. This is all you need. Now you can, if you want, add a battery, and you get these for like $2-3. If you want this thing to run not plugged in, I'll have links for these batteries. The big thing you want is you want to get a single cell LiPo battery, and you need to make sure that the JST connector is the right size. I'll have all that information down below for you if you need it. So okay, so we've got our board set up here, but you can't just turn the board on because it doesn't have the firmware on it. We have to flash Meshtastic firmware onto this thing to get it to work. So now we're gonna hop over to the computer and get it flashed. So when you sit down at your computer, first thing you need to do is make sure you have Chrome as a browser. If you don't have Chrome, it's not gonna work. You need Chrome specifically. Once you've got Chrome, you're gonna wanna go to flasher.meshtastic.org. Now, if you happen to get a V2, not to worry, it's not going to show up on here. There's a different flasher to use, but the steps are all the same. So we're going to take our board, plug it on into the computer. You should have a little light up. It tells you it's talking to it. So right now we need to flash Meshtastic onto the board. So you're going to come over here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to select the target device, and this is a Heltec V3. And if you go through here, you'll notice there are a lot of different options in here if you've got a different device. But right now we're doing the Heltec V3. So now you need to select a firmware version. The firmware version, when you open it up, there is unstable and stable. Unstable being alpha, stable being beta. You want to use basically the most recent beta version because that'll be stable. Click that, and now we're going to come over to flash. Now to flash this thing, you just click flash. It's going to give you all these fun instructions. You're going to hit continue. And the big thing you want to make sure you do is click full erase and install. Don't worry about Bundle Web UI, don't need that. And we're gonna come down here and click erase, flash, and install. A little box will pop up and you're gonna look for the device that is your device. Now, if you're not sure what device is your device, the easiest thing you can do now is unplug your board, see which one disappears off the list, and plug it back in. Now we know which device is the important device we want to zap. We're going to hit that, hit connect, and it's going to start doing its thing. It takes a little bit of time to do it, but once it's done, you can unhook it, plug it into power, and get this whole thing set up. So now you've got it flash, but it's not set up all the way because you got to set it up on your phone. Now you're also looking at this thing going, that's ugly, and you have these cool cases. I'm going to show you how you can make a case for free. The case I'm going to show you how to make doesn't require anything. So we're going to take this thing to set up. I'm going to plug it back into USB power over here, and it's going to fire up. It'll give you the little Meshtastic logo. Now, if you haven't already, you want to download the Meshtastic app onto your phone. When you fire up the Meshtastic app, you're going to see a thing across the bottom that gives you a lot of options. You want to click on Bluetooth, and you should see a Meshtastic device pop up on there. Now, if you've done a couple devices or you've set up a couple at the same time, on your home screen here, what's popping up, it'll tell you what device you're looking at. In this case, it is the Meshtastic DA50. We're going to click on that and it's going to try to connect. Now it's going to ask you for a PIN code, and the PIN code is going to show up on your screen here. Once it's connected, you have to set the region, and that's because there are different frequencies depending on the region you're in. So we're going to go set LoRa region, and then in my case, I am in the United States, so I'm going to select United States. If you're elsewhere, obviously select where you are. What this is doing is it's telling it what frequency to broadcast on. So that's why you want to get it right, otherwise you're not going to be able to talk to anybody else on your mesh. When you hit save, most times when you hit save, it's going to restart. So it'll say rebooting on this during the restart process. Once this thing is restarted, it's basically done. You don't have to do anything else to send your first message. I'm going to show you that. So we're now subscribed to the mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a message to this device here, and I'm going to show you how it works. So we're going to go into nodes. Okay, it took it a second to find nodes. If it doesn't show up with anything, there's two things going on. It either needs to find nodes, because it takes it a little bit to start finding nodes, and now it's already populating nodes on here, or it's not finding any. And these antennas and this frequency is very good at long range. It's very bad at penetrating things like walls and trees and whatnot. So if you're in your house, you might not hit the node just down the street from you. So if it's not connecting to anything, go outside. The reason this whole thing becomes addictive is because you realize I need more nodes. So I actually have this one here, and I have another one sitting in my truck on the roof that broadcasts out to my neighborhood, and they all talk to each other. So anyway, I've got this one now, so we're going to go communicate to HAL2. If you know where I got the name HAL from, leave me a comment down below. But we're going to communicate to HAL2. So we're going to go into messages, and there's primary channel right here, and that broadcasts to everybody on the mesh. Or you can go directly into your nodes and send to a node. Now I'm going to actually make HAL2 a favorite here. Go down here, add to favorites. Makes it a little bit easier. All right, now when I go to messages, I can go down to direct messages, and it's going to show the nodes that it's already found. It's found HAL2, so I'm just going to write in test and hit test. It is sending, and it's acknowledged. And right there on my screen, if you can see that there, there's my test message. It's as easy as that. Now let's show you how we're going to build a case for free. And all you need to build your free case is the box that it's shipped with. We're going to take the little foam piece out because we need that, and we need a few little parts in here. So let's get down to the table and make a free case. So we're going to start by unplugging our board so it's not powered, and we're going to remove the antenna. The box here is what we're going to be using for the case. It already came with it, we might as well use it. And we're going to leave the foam insert in here. The reason we're leaving the foam insert in here is because there is conductive stuff on here, and we're going to have this in here along with an antenna, and this, and with it all powered up, you don't want things contacting and shorting out. So I just realized my antenna just came unhooked. We're gonna pop that guy back on. Now we're gonna start modifying the case. Now I'm trying to do this as DIY as possible, and I'm gonna assume you may not have things like drill bits laying around your house. So we're gonna do it all with a pocket knife. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take this piece of foam, we're gonna notch the very corner of it to give that wire a place to pass through. So it's going to go in there just like that. The next thing we need to do is make a hole for that. So we're going to come in here, up in the very corner of this thing, we're going to poke, and we're going to start turning. Now, if you've got drill bits, obviously that's the better way to do it, and I do have drill bits, but I want to show doing this in a situation where maybe you don't have any real tools, and we're just going to spin. I know this is not the correct way to use a pocket knife. You can lambaste me down in the comments below, but if it's dumb and it works, is it that dumb? And I'm going to declare that good enough for government work. So now we're going to put the antenna base through it, just like so. And then the hardware on top of that. Get yourself a pair of pliers, tighten that up, but now the antenna is installed. So now I'll put that piece of foam back in, just like so, put the board in, just like so, and we're 90% done. Tuck the wire in there. The only thing now we gotta do is get power to it, and we're gonna be using our USB cable. Now, something you can do, if you want to, is you can get a battery and power it with a battery. This is an extra cost. It's a whole $3, but this does work. The one wonky thing you have to find is the correct JST connector size, so I will have all this information down below if it's something you want to do, but we're doing this job on the cheap, so what we're going to do is we're just going to modify this case to get the USB cable into it. So here we're going to just cut a notch in the side to allow access to our USB cable. Doing the same thing with our knife. Safety second. So we've cut our little notch through, USB cable goes in, our whole thing should power right back up. This can snap down, and boom, you've got a Meshtastic node ready to go, and you built the whole thing for 10 bucks. So I did mention that I had some recommendations at the beginning of the video, and to start out just saying the V3s are fantastic boards. They're great to learn on. They work wonderfully. The one downside is they do chew through batteries pretty quick. I'm using a 1000 milliamp hour battery right here, and I can get about a work day out of this thing. I unplug it in the morning, go to work, and by the time I get home that night, I have to charge it back up or it is dead. I recently also picked up one of these. This is the Haltech T114, and on the exact same battery, I'm getting 4 to 5 days of runtime out of this thing. So it is a much more efficient board, although it is more expensive. The V2s and V3s, you can get between $10 and $15 a board. These ones, I think I paid like $35 for this one, maybe a little bit more, but it also came with the case included, which was nice, and a GPS module, which the V3s do not come with. So if you're looking for an upgrade to those, look at the T114s. I'll have links for those. The flashing process is identical, and they actually work pretty much exactly the same. So this is another inexpensive board you can go with for a little mobile modular unit. Now, I also mentioned this thing at the beginning of the video. This is the Lilio T-Deck, and this is one of the new hot items out there. And at the time of filming right now, which is December, January of 2024-25, I don't recommend this thing. I went down the rabbit hole when I got into these. I bought one of these boards. I kind of got hooked, bought a bunch more boards, different boards, all on AliExpress, and they went on sale. And then I finally bought this thing. At the time of filming, I don't recommend it. I do think this thing is going to be awesome at some point, but right now the firmware that we're flashing onto these things just isn't up to what we need it to be. When you get one of these stock, it's either going to come with the Meshtastic firmware or its own firmware, and you're going to have to flash it. With the regular Meshtastic firmware, the usability on this thing is a pain. The graphic user interface doesn't really help you at all. You have to know keyboard shortcuts. Sending messages is tricky. If you start writing a message and you want to cancel the message, the only way to cancel it is by resetting the device, which is ridiculous. And when you reset the device, you lose everything you've done. So every message you've received or sent is wiped, it's vapor, it's gone. Versus with one of these, if you reset this device, hit the reset button, all that info is still on your phone that it was transmitting back and forth to. The other thing is, these things are big. This is chunkier than my phone. You know, with the antenna, it is taller, and you really want to have an external antenna on one of these things. And all these buttons, there is no method to lock them. So every time I put it in my pocket, I swipe the scroll wheel, it powers up. I accidentally hit buttons. I've sent stuff from my pocket. Good old butt dialing on Meshtastic, I guess, is a thing with these. I do think they're going to get it down pat because these are so popular right now, and I do think they're going to get these interfaces really dialed in. I just don't think they're there yet. I will pin comment down below once they get this thing worked out, because I'm not going to give up on this thing. I'm just going to wait until we get some decent firmware for it. But in the meantime, just go with one of these. If you know, this thing is the size of the pagers of my teenage years and college years. You can throw this in your pocket. You can belt clip it. It can kind of go anywhere. You don't need a big antenna, but you can do it. So I would just recommend we're going with one of these and getting started on the mesh and having some fun. So like I said, I will have links to all this stuff down below, but prices change so quick. Use my links as a reference point, not as a purchase point. Search around and find the best deal that you can find on each thing. Just make sure you're getting what you know you're getting, because I have accidentally bought V2 boards when I thought I was buying V3 boards. But I hope this video helped you out. If you have questions about Meshtastic, leave me a comment down below. But also, if you have questions about it, join the Discord and join the Meshtastic subreddit, because there are people on there that know way more than me that can help you out. But if this video did help you out, give it a great big thumbs up, leave those comments down below, do all that YouTuber stuff, subscribe, blah, blah, hooray. And of course, thanks for watching.